Breaking news from the front. Russian assault on Sumy. NATO countries have finally done it. Tons of weapons. Drones on the front lines have decimated Putin's army. Russian generals are in tears. Something big is being prepared. The Ukrainian Armed Forces are sending signals. What are they? All this in our episode of Hellpoint. This drone is true frontline firepower. Its time is the night. Out of the darkness, the Avenger silently emerges, sneaks up almost invisible, delivers a precise strike, and disappears. It has become a true talisman for our soldiers. One flight, and the enemy's ammunition depot was blown up. After that, it was pure hell. What else can this deadly drone do? And why are the occupiers afraid of it? Find out in our report. The crew of the Avenger drone.
There's a chance that,
Yeah, there are some good spots.
Yeah.
And it all starts long before the flight itself. Many targets?
Not many, but
They're big ones. So it could be equipment, it could be, artillery, depots.
Because you don't need to control the drone. All the targets are set in the computer in advance.
with this little plane, I think the hardest part is throwing it correctly. Because it's launched by hand. If you launch it properly and it takes off, right? That's it. The rest it does on its own. From start to finish.
We're getting ready.
Call just for an hour.
And we head out to the positions in the EW vehicle. The window is left slightly open to hear enemy FPV drones.
Fate will most certainly smile upon us, dear brothers, Ukrainian.
By this time, it gets dark. The Avenger operates specifically at night. Next, you'll see everything in black and red colors. Because red flashlights are less visible to the enemy at a distance, their light doesn't travel as far as regular white light. There's very little time. The soldiers set up the position, connect Starlink and the antennas.
The main thing is to bring in the weapons, set them up, and establish communications.
Only an FPV drone can stop the work.
Whoa, to the shelter.
To the shelter. Hello.
We come here every night because our front line is very dynamic and we often have to change positions. Since we work with drones, once we launch one, we have about 50 minutes to rest, eat, or read a book. So,
You get that opportunity.
yeah.
While we have time, we talk about everyday things. I ask why Kata chose that particular call sign.
Kata is a part of karate. It's when you fight an opponent. And the main goal is to practice all the movements, meaning the technique.
But the conversations don't last long. Work appears.
To make the required number of sorties, you have to go prepare the drone. Yeah, that's how it is, because in summer our time is limited since we can only work during the dark hours. So now we dress like this and head out to work.
Noise is preparing the parachute for the drone.
The drone comes back and it just deploys the parachute right at the squad's designated spot. And that way the drone will remain undamaged. In fact, it used to land without a parachute and stayed intact.
Previously, Noise was a ceramicist. He learned to fly in the army, piloting both FPV drones and vampires. Now he's working with the Avenger.
Before these, well, I had never flown at all. I thought that my gaming experience, playing on the computer or with a joystick would help me.
The Avenger drone can perform both reconnaissance and attack missions, and it can do so without human involvement. The UAVs move freely across the battlefield and avoid obstacles thanks to their artificial intelligence system.
Oh, Bison has arrived.
Hello! Next, the Avenger gets its wings and tail attached. It undergoes pre-flight preparation.
All right, the checklist is ready. Now I'll upload the mission.
And the most important part, the launch.
You could say the hardest part is behind us. You've launched it. Now, 50 minutes of rest.
Yes, the hardest part, is behind us. So now we are just waiting for the plane to return. And most important is the results of class.
Spoiler, believe me, they will be. Meanwhile, we're waiting. And I'm continuing to get to know the soldiers. Alexei spent 1.5 years in the infantry. Then he went through training and retrained, and now he makes life easier for the infantry. From the sky,
Here, I really feel that we are also genuinely helping our infantry forces a great deal, and also helping our armed forces in general, because the overall effectiveness of our strike units is quite high, truly impressive.
time flies. And now it's time to go pick up the plane. On site, it arrived. Now everything repeats. The drone is being disassembled, and once again we go down to the basement via FPV.
Where's the FPV, right? Yeah, could be.
And we check to see if the bird completed its mission. What did we hit?
An ammo ammunition depot. If it was an ammo depot, it would be great if there was a detonation. The next one happened. That would be a real jackpot. Then we can consider the depot destroyed. Well, yeah. Oh, detonation. There it is, guys. You have to see this. Boom. Oh, congratulations, congratulations, congratulations. That's it, congratulations. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, awesome.
You can do several of these sorties while the night lasts. But as soon as dawn breaks, the work stops. And at first light, we quickly pack up and leave the position. Outside, it's quiet. You can hear the birds chirping and see columns of smoke from the KAB strikes. Reporting from Donetsk region. Tatiana Demuk, Mikhailo Holovnenko, and Alexei Xanzak. We are Ukraine, Marathon. United News.
The enemy is infiltrating right up to Sumy. They act treacherously, launching waves of meat assaults at the front, daily shelling, sabotage, and attempts to break through. However, breaking up people is not as easy as Putin expected. Enemy mercenaries are getting slapped down again and again. Epic footage. After this, no one wants to meet the armed forces of Ukraine face to face. You'll find out what the situation is on the front line right now in just a moment. The enemy continues to put pressure along the entire front line.
There has been a sharp increase in combat clashes along the entire length of the front, which is about 200 kilometers. It should be noted that over the past 2 weeks, the intensity of combat engagements has increased by a third.
The situation in the northeast of Ukraine is rapidly escalating. After the Russian invaders carried out a series of breakthroughs at the beginning of June, at least 5 villages came under enemy control, according to the General Staff. Among them are Velika, Pisarivka, Rezhivka, and several other small border settlements.
It is worth recalling that since last year, the enemy began amassing forces, both in terms of personnel and equipment, which were primarily used against the Ukrainian defense forces, who and continue to conduct their operations within the Kursk region. And it is precisely from these forces that the enemy is now deploying infantry groups in an attempt to enter our territory. But again, if we compare the length of the border with Russia within the Sumy region, which is over 550 kilometers directions, where the enemy uses the tactics of small assault groups, are actually quite limited in scale.
According to the latest data from Deep State, the enemy is present in the villages of Andrivka and Vodolaki.
The Russians are conducting tactical operations to establish a new northern front line, just as we are doing in both directions. In other words, the Russians are trying to cut off our territorial enclave within Russian territory. We are trying, literally just a dozen kilometers to the west, to cut off a similar enclave into our territory, also near Tayokine. So what is happening is a mutual creation of the line of combat contact. The bad thing is that this is happening not far from our capital. But the same problem exists in Kharkiv and in Kherson. That is with our regional centers, and Zaporizhzhia is not far off either. So we have problems with our regional centers. They are either located close to the Russian border or near the line of combat contact, the front line. Practically basically from Sumy to Kherson.
The main task of Putin's men is to create a buffer zone.
The main objectives and intentions of the occupiers are specifically to establish direct control over the settlements of Yunakivka and Khotin, namely these two locations. Control over these settlements will allow the Russian occupation forces to keep the residential neighborhoods of the regional center under fire control, including with the use of tube and rocket artillery.
Yes, the enemy is rapidly approaching the regional center. The Russians are only 22 kilometers away from the city of Sumy, which is less than half an hour's drive for their vehicles. But there is no need to despair prematurely, because Ukrainian defenders are putting up serious resistance, and the Russians do not have the operational reserves needed to capture the regional center. However, against this backdrop, the aggressor may resort to their favorite tactic, terrorizing the civilian population.
In my opinion, the occupiers will switch to a tactic of terror against the civilian population, that is, indiscriminate strikes on residential neighborhoods with the aim of sowing chaos and panic among civilians, undermining trust in the actions of central and local authorities, and most importantly, provoking mass migration processes deeper into Ukrainian territory.
It also cannot be ruled out that the advance of the Russians in the Sumy region may be part of a broader plan. For example, just as the Ukrainian Armed Forces entered the Kursk region to disrupt the Russian offensive in Donbass, now they may be putting pressure on Sumy to force Ukraine to transfer reserves from the south, and this would open up an opportunity for the occupiers to advance in the Zaporizhia region. And all these bloody actions of Putin's horde are happening in parallel with enormous losses. After all, the Russian war machine spares no one.
The tactics employed by the Russian occupiers typically involve small, lightly armed infantry groups, often operating without any support from heavy armored vehicles. This tactic is a result of the successful actions of Ukrainian drones, up to 70% losses in personnel and heavy armored vehicles.
Some are killed and then other groups move in. And this is basically happening every day. Their objective is to amass forces on Ukrainian territory and essentially to expand the area of fighting across our country. But as we can see, the enemy is unable to achieve any significant advance.
Despite the fact that the situation is tense along the entire front line, the armed forces of Ukraine control every section of it and are doing everything possible to stop and destroy the enemy.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Now there's even more fury. A new drone has appeared in Ukraine. Putin's army is shaking. Russian generals are trying to gather their mercenaries together. Putin has ambitious plans for them. Kyiv, Kharkiv, Dnipro and more. The Kremlin has laid out a new offensive map. This will lead to the collapse of the Russian Federation. What points to this? We'll tell you all about it in the report right now.
No pause and no de-escalation. In 2026, Russia plans to seize 2 regions and cut Ukraine off from the Black Sea. Moscow is preparing a large-scale occupation of eastern Ukraine in a buffer zone near the borders, despite signals about possible negotiations. Also, despite diplomatic efforts, including Donald Trump's attempts to persuade the Kremlin to come to the negotiating table, Russia continues to pursue aggressive plans to expand the occupied territories of Ukraine. This was reported by Politico, citing Ukrainian officials in Washington. According to Pavlo Paliza, deputy head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, the Kremlin is counting on establishing full control over the Donetsk and Luhansk regions as early as this fall. The next stage is the creation of a buffer zone along Ukraine's northern border by the end of 2025. But Moscow's plans do not end there. In 2026, Russia may attempt to seize territories east of the Dnipro, including the Odessa and Mykolaiv regions, which would effectively deprive Ukraine of access to the Black Sea. This would deal a blow to Ukrainian grain exports and logistics as a whole. These ambitions are also confirmed by Western analysts. In their opinion, Russia will accelerate its offensives in the summer in order to increase pressure on the armed forces of Ukraine and their allies. However, maintaining such a pace until 2026 will be extremely difficult due to losses and the depletion of resources. Meanwhile, NATO countries' intelligence services do not observe any signs that the Kremlin is abandoning its 2 main objectives, the subjugation of Ukraine and the revision of the European security system established after the Cold War. Therefore, instead of de-escalation, the Kremlin is preparing a new round of escalation. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine has adopted the strike drone General Chereshnya AER into service. This is a new generation multifunctional system, and the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine has already officially codified and approved it for use in the armed forces of Ukraine. The new domestic unmanned aerial system called General Chereshnya AER is a strike multi-purpose drone capable of engaging a wide range of targets on the ground and in the air. It stands out for its high flight speed, ability to operate at altitudes unreachable for most enemy UAVs, and high strike accuracy. The system is equipped with daytime and thermal imaging cameras with an automated target detection and recognition system, allowing it to strike in manual, semi-automatic or fully autonomous modes, mobility and rapid deployment. The system can be deployed in a matter of minutes, which is especially important for mobile operations on the front line. This makes it an effective tool for rapid counterattacks and precision strikes. The introduction of such UAVs expands the drone capabilities of the armed forces and enhances their ability to combat highly maneuverable and well-protected enemy targets. Meanwhile, experts have shared why the year 2026 could mark the end of the war and what role internal collapse within Russia might play in this. The end of the war could come as early as 2026, not because of negotiations or a turning point at the front, but as a result of internal collapse within Russia itself. The conflict has entered a phase of war of attrition where the winner will not be the one who advances, but the one who can endure the longest. The economic situation in Russia continues to deteriorate. The central bank acknowledges a recession while inflation is rising and prices for basic goods are hitting record highs. Amid shortages of even such basic products as potatoes, Moscow is already being forced to turn to neighboring countries for emergency supplies. Sanctions pressure, mobilization, and the exhaustion of military infrastructure are leading to a growing systemic crisis, and at a certain point, continuing the war may simply become impossible. And then its end will come not as a result of an agreement, but due to an internal admission of defeat by the Kremlin. The year 2026 is seen as a potentially pivotal year when internal crisis may force Russia to halt its aggression, even if fighting on the front lines is still ongoing. That's all for today. Tune in for the next news update tomorrow.
This was shown for the first time. The video captured footage of a squad of grenade launchers returning from their positions. The job is done. The occupiers wipe their sweat in anger and have no idea what to do next. A woman stormed into the fight with the enemy and gave a masterclass. Who is she? You will find out in the following report.
An army SUV is leisurely making its way home along the night highway. Here, where there are no enemy FPVs, there's no need to rush anymore. The grenade launcher squad is returning in full strength. Thank you! Next to her male comrades, she smiles and feels a bit shy in front of the camera. Thank you!
Maybe I'm just shy.
Where have you returned from today?
From the position.
How long were you there?
It was the 5th day.
Was this your first deployment?
Yes.
The soldiers of the 130th Battalion, which is now subordinate to the 65 Brigade, invite us in. Her name is Daria. She's from the Dnipropetrovsk region, and she's only 20. She says she joined the military to work with paperwork.
As a clerk, working in the office for a year and a half, I was a clerk. Well, I was the clerk in the fire support company. I've just wanted to go to the positions for a long time.
In this unit, everyone is combat personnel. She was probably the only one who wasn't, but now she is.
The commander of the fire support company is Batu, with the call sign Stari, where he serves as commander. The 49-year-old officer does not hide the fact. He didn't want to send a girl to the front line who is the same age as his daughter.
We're short on people. We're catastrophically short on people. And now we have to grant her wish. Honestly, I would never have let her go. She's like my younger child. I mean, well, for me, it's every 2 hours, a report every 2 hours, so that I know everything is all right there. Well, she really is like a child to me here.
Shot! Plus, these are shots from Daria's first combat mission, where the 20-year-old fighter was aiming at the enemy with a tank grenade launcher. And during her free time, Daria jokes, she encouraged her comrades to watch a TV series. Of course, about love.
We watched the series Roxolana together.
When we had time.
The Magnificent Century, Roxolana, a Turkish film.
They say you got everyone hooked on the Turkish series.
Well, she watches it, so we watch it too.
Did you like it?
Well, of course, how could we not? We're all on the same wavelength.
The SPG crew commander, a 38-year-old volunteer from Poltava region with the call sign Spaniard, is confident. During combat operations, there were no complaints about their female comrade.
Right now, our targets are enemy personnel. She handles it excellently. First of all, she is not afraid and completes all the tasks, and she does her job as a gunner very well. The main thing is to keep a cool head, a warm heart, and simply not be afraid to do your job. That's all there is to it.
Is all this about Daria?
Of course.
The young female fighter, after returning from her first combat mission, makes a video call to her family. On the phone screen is her younger sister, who is not yet 2 years old.
Sasha is there, right?
Hello, my little sunbeam.
Daria assures she is ready to head to the front line again. The commander doesn't mind.
Will you let her go again?
I think so, but a little later.
Right now, the soldiers of the 130th Battalion are in great need of funds for electronic warfare equipment and vehicle repairs. So they're asking those who care to contribute to the fundraising. Andriy Pokhta, Artem Dezhenkov, Vikna STB Program, United News.
NATO countries are urgently arming themselves to the teeth. The arms race has begun. The USA is going all out. Great Britain is panicking the war is close by. Russia is making its last efforts in defense, churning out drones and more. Total militarization. European defense standards are being urgently rewritten. What is the world preparing for? We'll tell you about it in just a moment.
defense budgets are increasing, armies are being reformed, and military production is running at full capacity. Even civilian enterprises are shifting their focus to defense. Instability in the world is provoking a new arms race.
Besides the Russian-Ukrainian war, we can see that tensions are gradually rising around Taiwan. We understand the current state of relations between India and Pakistan. China is also getting involved there in certain ways. In addition, we know that there is an unstable region like Africa where various armed groups from the Russian Federation are actively operating. We are also aware of what is happening ultimately in Israel along with the Gaza Strip. Countries are drawing conclusions and trying to extrapolate this to what might suddenly emerge in their own regions, so they need to be prepared.
Global defense spending is at a record high, almost $3 trillion last year. The United States spent the most, nearly $1 trillion.
We are equipping American troops with the most advanced technologies so that we continue to remain the strongest and most formidable army in the world. For the first time in history, President Trump is allocating more than $1 trillion for defense next year. America's Golden Shield or 6th generation F-47 fighter jets, new stealth bombers, submarines, destroyers, hypersonic weapons and drones. All of this is part of a massive rearmament effort.
China is breathing down the United States' neck. Although officially its defense spending is 3 times less than that of the United States, Beijing is actively expanding its navy, armored vehicles and air force. In general, more than 100 countries have increased their military budgets. The demand for weapons is enormous. Factories can't keep up.
Countries that understand the tectonic shift in the global security situation are now trying to purchase weapons. But this isn't the situation where you walk into a supermarket, stroll down the aisles, and fill your cart with everything you want. No, you come to the seller and have to get in line. And for some types of weapons, that line can last for decades.
The war in Ukraine and Trump's policies have forced Europe to strengthen its own security. There's definitely a component where the US casting doubt.
The United States has sown doubts. The countries of the European Union started to wonder what to do if their ally turns away and began to change their approach to defense. But this isn't a decision you can make today and implement tomorrow. A large-scale reorganization of the entire system is needed.
Britain is shifting to a war-ready mode, investing over $2 billion in the defense industry and building new factories. France is prepared to spend 5% of its GDP on defense and to extend its nuclear forces to cover the rest of its allies. Poland is increasing its military budget, ramping up the production of equipment and ammunition, and actively importing weapons. A separate project, the Eastern Shield, is a large-scale system of fortifications along the borders with Belarus and Russian Kaliningrad. Germany is also actively building up its strength. Chancellor Merz promises to make the Bundeswehr the strongest army in Europe within 4 years. Berlin is helping its allies, having deployed a permanent brigade in Lithuania to stop a possible Russian advance.
Peace in Europe has been shattered. We must be able to defend ourselves. Freedom is not given for nothing. Germany held on to illusions for a long time, but that time has passed. We are fully aware of the seriousness of the situation and of our responsibility.
The German corporation Rheinmetall, a key producer of ammunition for Europe and especially for Ukraine, has increased its production tenfold over the past 3 years. The company is building 10 new factories, including some in Ukraine. Berlin is promising Kyiv more weapons, including long-range ones. And although still without Taurus missiles, it will invest in Ukrainian production of long-range missiles. Civilian companies are also joining the rearmament effort. Volkswagen, a symbol of the German automotive industry, plans to adapt its production lines for military equipment. Airbus will increase the production of combat helicopters, fighter jets and drones.
The way Europe has mobilized is an unprecedented phenomenon. We are seeing calls for unity and strengthening defense, and this certainly opens up prospects for us not only from a business perspective, but also in terms of how we want to serve Europe's sovereignty.
But for now, Europe lacks the capacity to meet the entire demand for weapons.
Europe has grown accustomed to a fairly peaceful, calm coexistence on the European continent. As a result, many defense industry enterprises in Europe shut down after the 90s, after 1991. The amount of weapons and military equipment produced has decreased. At this stage, they lack the technical and defense industrial capabilities to fully meet the existing demand.
Meanwhile, Russia is ramping up its weapons production. Moscow ranks third in the world in military spending, $149 billion a year, more than 7% of GDP. These are the official figures. The real numbers are likely higher. Moscow still has the ability to finance the war.
The Russian Federation's tanker fleet, which covertly sells oil abroad. European countries, the United States, countries in the United States of America are trying to restrict these opportunities. Nevertheless, they still manage to sell something somewhere and in this way try to replenish their own resources. How long will this be enough? And when will our partners finally realize that it is necessary to fully tighten the screws on the Russian Federation?
While Ukraine is bearing the greatest military burden in the world, over 34% of its GDP, NATO is looking to agree on increasing defense spending to at least 5%. A decision is being prepared for the summit in The Hague in June. The West realizes that war is already close and is preparing for defense. It is the armed forces of Ukraine that are giving time for this preparation. Veronica Boyko, Facti, ICTV, United News Marathon.
That's all from me for now. I was your host, Darina Hutsakalo. Even more intense news from the front in our next broadcast. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. See you soon.